New leaks leave no doubt, and there really should not have been any doubt before, but they leave no doubt that the NSA is allowed to pick up Americans' international communications.
Before we get to that topic, we have some late breaking news. The Washington Post is now reporting that federal officials have formally charged Edward Snowden, the NSA contract employee who disclosed all this information, have formally charged him with espionage and theft and conversion of government property. Charles, your reaction?
It was obvious, it was inevitable. I'm surprised they would dump it on a Friday afternoon unless they're not that interested in publicity, which I suppose is true. But what else are you going to do? The guy obviously, I mean, even if you believe he may not be convicted, he clearly has acted. He stole the property, he released it, he broke the rules, and he broke his oath. So I think that's a hell of a starting point. I think his chances of getting off are practically zero. The only question is, would he be returned to the United States?
I was going to say, I mean, at least at this point, we still think he's in Hong Kong, and will Chinese officials turn him back, extradite him? We'll have to wait and see. Let's get to the subject that we're going to discuss. The growing controversy over the revelation this week that the FBI has received clearance from federal aviation officials in at least 4 instances since 2010 to use drones in various government surveillance cases. Charles, what do you make of that?
Well, if that is true, then it's an average of 1 a year, so it should be stopped early, and it obviously would be extremely rare. I'm against the use of drones internally for law enforcement, with 2 exceptions. One would be a natural disaster, the fires in Colorado, for example. It's not even an issue of privacy, or for a very specific crime, a very specific example, which we heard of, for example, the kidnapping of the 5-year-old girl, I believe in Arkansas, where they apparently had a drone, and where you get a court order and a warrant, obviously, so it'd be very, very strict. But
in that case, for instance, where there's a hostage situation, you want to get a sense of what's going on, what this fella has, what kind of, and you're in a siege, doesn't a drone make sense there?
It does, but you don't have a lot of those every year. If that's once a year, that would be okay. But what I think has to be made clear, at the beginning of the entire era of drones, we should never have it up there like a stationary camera in the streets of London, except it's a camera on a really high pole, which is operating all the time and having a view all the time of public spaces, or obviously private spaces, that law enforcement is looking at. I think we ought to make the rules early. Congress ought to be doing that, and to be extremely strict in completely outlawing that.
On the drones, I'm afraid to say I think Charles is just a Luddite. They're an inevitable tool of law enforcement. We have law enforcement that handles all sorts of dangerous things now, including guns, helicopters, and SWAT teams. And it's all about the protocols you establish for using them. But they will be used.
I just have to say,
helicopters are loud. You can hear them coming. That's the difference.
I just want to say we have a rule here. We never call Charles a Luddite. It really ticks him off. All right, we have to take a break here. This week we ask you to vote in our Friday lightning round poll for your favorite topic. And today, in a tremendous upset, you chose the Luddite, Charles, for his pick. Charles, what is your topic?
The origin of the word Luddite. No, I actually have a topic. Obama gave a speech in Germany this week. Was it A, stirring defense of the United States and the concept of liberty, a la Reagan and Kennedy? B, a mediocre mush of platitudes? Or C, the worst presidential speech on foreign affairs in memory, empty, self-indulgent, anachronistic, and adolescent?
Now, before you give, as you always do, the correct answer, we want to give you a taste of the president's speech in Berlin.
I've come here to this city of hope because the tests of our time demand the same fighting spirit that defined Berlin a half-century ago.
So the answer is A, a stirring recreation of Kennedy's speech?
It doesn't even reach the level of mush. C is the correct answer. It's a bit
embarrassing.
Harsh. It's a bit harsh. Oh, yes, absolutely. Empty, self-indulgent, anachronistic, and adolescent.
There's also concerns about slower growth and a tightening of credit inside China, which has been a huge engine of economic growth, one of the few places with big growth around the world.
That is true, but that's been happening over a period of weeks. I think the fact that you had the sell-off for a couple of days right after the Bernanke statement, I think indicates how much the economy is dependent on the heroin that Bernanke has been administering. And the idea, the threat of slightly letting off on it next year was enough to send stock traders jumping out of windows. So I think it shows you how much there's a lack of confidence and also a weakness in the economy.
Charles, your winner.
Christina Torre, the daughter of Joe Torre, the baseball immortal, who this week saved the life of a toddler falling out of a second-story window by catching him, as they say in the trade, soft hands like her father.
And your loser.
And my loser, unfortunately, is a guy I admire, Marco Rubio. He imagined, or he thought, and he promised that in the bill he proposed, there would be a hard trigger, meaning there'd have to be a results-oriented trigger to get a path to citizenship. And that was in the Cornyn Amendment. He voted in favor. It was defeated, and he may not end up with it, which would be a huge defeat.
This has been a Sunfish production.